already. But I praise God for the opportunity on tonight. I'm also a first lady, pastor's wife, and my husband is Pastor Pope, and we're in the area, and we just glad to be a part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Bryant.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Shirley Bryant, and I am the president of our neighborhood association, Parker Essex Bowes. We shorten it for PEB. I've been in this neighborhood for 41 years. We've been a neighborhood association for 12 years. And I'm glad to be here and glad to meet everyone.
Thank you. And we also have another Shirley, but Mrs. Bryant goes by Mrs. Bryant, so that'll help with the distinction. So Shirley.
Hi, I'm Shirley Knudsen, and as Christopher said, I think I've known him more like 20 to 25 years. I don't have great credentials like you guys do. I'm a friend. I also am a very, very, very good friend of a professor at Wesleyan in the education department. I am a retired teacher. I'm very concerned about community things. Holly Heights is not my personal community, but I feel close to it because of my friends who are a part of that community. So I appreciate being invited to this. I don't know how much I have to add. I do have opinions, as Christopher knows. So thank Christopher.
Yes, thank you, Shirley. Valerie.
My name is Valerie Mitchell, and I've been in the area 42 years, and I also graduated from Texas Wesleyan in 2006.
Awesome. Got a lot of Texas Wesleyan alumni. I'm gonna go to Dennis. Dennis needs an award. He's been to all, this is the third session that he's been attended. So Dennis, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Christopher. Hi, I'm Dennis Chiesa. I'm architecture professor, assistant professor at UT Arlington. Nice to meet you.
Awesome, thanks. Also, we have Lindsay. She's worked alongside of us, working in the community. And she's, well, I'm gonna let her do her introduction. Go ahead, Lindsay, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I have my camera off. I have a lot of distractions going on, so I might turn it back off. I'm Lindsay Bishop. I've been working with Christopher and Lawrence. I'm a senior at Texas Wesleyan Sociology Department. Yay! God willing, I'm going to graduate this December. But I've been involved with Christopher and Lawrence, working with the Community Expo and with Dr. Simons, and interviewed Miss Bryant and some others from the neighborhood for a project, and I really enjoyed being a part of it.
Awesome. And last but not least, Pam. She's going to introduce herself and tell about her organization. Pam.
Hi, my name is Pamela Young, and I am a lifelong Fort Worth resident. I actually attended middle school at William James. So right there in the community. I currently am a community organizer with United Fort Worth, which we have our United Fort Worth Community Justice Center, also right there in the community on Vaughn Boulevard. And right now we are focusing heavily on the race to elect a new sheriff in Tarrant County. And I'll be sharing a little bit more about that later with you guys.
Awesome. One of the things Pam and I, we were discussing, and if you notice, everyone that's part of the panel, we had, do you believe that there is a problem? And when I was talking with Pam, you know, we won't go into great lengths, but one of the things that she was sharing with me are some of the struggles that's within the community. And it kind of parallels to, do you believe there's a problem? Pam, do you want to kind of tell them a little bit about what we talked about? Like, for instance, the homeless lady that was arrested just by sitting at Conoco.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about, so United Fort Worth, we have three areas that we focus on. One of them is immigration justice work. The other one is civic empowerment and engagement. And then the other one is criminal justice work. And that's the team that I lead up. And part of one of the things that we've started doing is bailing people out of the Tarrant County Jail on a pretty regular basis. We started off doing that in light of COVID-19 because we saw that there was a real problem, not only in the Tarrant County Jail, but in jails and prisons across the nation, with a pandemic that requires folks to social distance and stay clean. It's kind of hard to do that in a jail and in a prison. So we started petitioning our local government to the sheriff and the district attorney and the criminal court judges to say, hey, why don't you guys do compassionate release?
Yeah.
Basically releasing people who are not a threat to the community, right? They've proven or they're you know, they're not a threat to the community. And also releasing people who may be elderly and who may have medical conditions that would make them at an even greater risk for COVID complications. But we were unsuccessful in that. The sheriff, the judges, the district attorneys, they decided we're not going to do compassionate release. We're only going to release people when their time is up. So we said, okay, we're going to go in there and get our own people out then. So we started a bail fund, raising money. And if anybody gave to that bail fund that's on this call, I just want to say thank you, because we were able to raise over $40,000 from the community alone. And then we were able to get some grants as well. And we started bailing people out. Our first bailout was on Juneteenth, June 19th. We bailed out. We wanted to bail out 19 people to keep it symbolic, but we ended up getting 16 people out, which was still amazing. One of those people was the person that I told Lawrence about, and it was a woman, an elderly woman, and she was homeless, and she had been arrested for criminal trespassing. And if you know anything about criminal trespassing, you know, it might sound bad, but in most cases, it's typically a homeless person who doesn't have anywhere to go. And the owner of the establishment calls the police on them to get them off of their property.
And
Go ahead.
one of the things you were telling me, she was at the Conoco, they picked her up, you guys found out about it and posted the bail for 200. And then when we were talking, I was like, Pam, what's the dynamic of the bill? And you were saying about the court-appointed attorney and how that's worked against you. That's what I was just going to comment.
Yeah. So it's a cycle. It's an endless cycle. You can imagine people are out here homeless in a pandemic or not in a pandemic, and they don't have anywhere to go. Then the police come and harass them and arrest them. Then they go to jail, and they don't have any money to bond out of jail. You know, they're homeless, they're jobless. So they end up just languishing in the jail. unless someone bails them out. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to bail this woman out. We bailed her out. Her bond was $200. We bailed her out, and now, you know, her court date has come and gone, and she didn't show up, and no one could get in touch with her again because she's homeless. And the information that she gave us, it just, you know, some wrong numbers, this, that, and the third. We just couldn't get in touch with her. Long story short, if she gets arrested, if she gets a warrant, right? Because when you don't show up for your court date, they put out a warrant for your arrest. So here's this woman who has not a penny to her name, and she's already been arrested once. She's probably been arrested many times before this you know, time when we bailed her out, and she's about to get arrested again, possibly, all because poverty is being criminalized in Fort Worth, Texas. Poverty is being criminalized. When we throw people in jail because they don't have anywhere to go, criminalizing poverty. And what I was telling Lawrence was, it would have been much cheaper for the county to simply give her permanent supportive housing. The first time she ever got arrested, which was probably years ago, if they would have done that, we would have saved thousands of dollars prosecuting her. She's probably been prosecuted over and over and over again for the same thing. And that's been the case with a lot of the folks that we have bailed out. They've been arrested over and over and over again for the same thing, many of them criminal trespassing, simply because the resources have been going to policing them instead of to helping them.
Instead of a solution. Very well put. So that starts the whole conversation. Do you believe that there is a problem? Anyone wants to go first? Let everyone speak at once. Valerie, did you raise your hand? Or was that?
No.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, Lady Paula. Go ahead.
I agree with Ms. Young about what's happening to our homeless people. We live in an area where we are facing that, and it is a problem. And we would like to help, we do help, but then they yet need a permanent place, somewhere to go, because if you're wasting money elsewhere, you could, you know, get them housing. There are a lot of places, you know, in the area, in that area, that they can renovate and turn into a house for the homeless. And so we can only do so much. We can give them money, we can give them food, but then they yet need a place to stay. So yes, we just turn our wheels because we're not doing the issue, you know, helping them find a place to stay, a permanent place to stay.
Good answer. Anybody else have anything to say? Do y'all see that there's? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Fred.
Christopher, this is Fred.
Yes.
So, you know, when you and I talked several weeks ago, and you asked me the question, do you think there's a problem? And, you know, the obvious answer to me is yes, there's a problem. And then you said, so what is that problem? And of course, I'm looking at it from a broader perspective. So, you know, number one, I think there is systemic racism. And number two, there's an over-reliance on certain types of policing tools. And just listening to Pam talk about the homeless person who is arrested for criminal trespass makes me think of that old saying that if your only tool is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. And so to me, one of the big problems that we have is that we have very limited tools. And so we use the tools in inappropriate ways. And so rather than relying on overly harsh policing techniques and policing tools, there needs to be an expansion of social networks that will allow us to bring other tools, non-police tools to the table. So when I look at it, I'm thinking about what those big picture problems are. There are all sorts of examples, just like Pam mentioned. And there are many aspects of the policing issue that could fall in that same category. Individuals who are who have mental illness issues, and often that's also part of the homeless population. Sometimes when police are called because of domestic disputes, there are all sorts of responses that the community could have that are not police responses, and yet we tend to over rely on the police response, and the police tools, at least the ones that they're taught most to use, are not necessarily the appropriate tools, and we end up doing a lot of damage because all we think we've got is a hammer, and we start turning other problems into nails that could be resolved in other kinds of ways.
Very well said,
Okay.
President Slabaugh.
I think that was really good, President Slabaugh. And I agree. However, I do believe that we do have other tools. I don't think we have a limit on the tools, because your resources that you have determine what kind of tools you can access. We have a lot of resources. We're directing them in the wrong way. We're putting, the city of Fort Worth alone, over 35% of our city budget goes toward the police department. Okay, towards hammer. But just a small, tiny percentage goes toward permanent supportive housing. And as a matter of fact, in this last budget cycle, the city of Fort Worth got extra money through the CARES Act that would go toward permanent supportive housing, and they slashed that in half. So it's about priorities of the city and of the community, and it's about having the will to put your resources towards the tools that we know are going to actually solve the problems.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Pam. Lindsay, did you have a comment?
I was just gonna say, I think part of it is also with the resources, what limited resources that are available at the moment, awareness of those resources are not widely known. So if you are someone who is homeless and living on the street, you know where to go when it's cold, or you know where to go in certain situations, but you don't always know or are made aware of new resources that might come available. Just like with our community expo that we tried to do, we tried so hard to get people from the community to come in onto Texas Wesleyan campus and to see what resources that were available in the neighborhood and try to figure out what else was needed. But to get the residents to actually come in or to be aware of or feel safe and confident enough to come and participate seemed to be an overall issue. So there's a lack of awareness, not, I don't know how to say it. There's communication, but it's breaking down somewhere. It's not passed all the way through to all the different levels to reach those that need to know what is offered or how to get what they need.
Well, it's just like, and participation is part of that. If you think about it, the mayor, when people go to vote for the mayor, I don't know if it's like 10% of the population. And for instance, in District 8, there's 170,000 residents, but under 3,000 people voted. So it's educating people and then letting them know the value. When I was canvassing the neighborhood and I was on the Sycamore Community Golf Course when they were in the midst of shutting it down and turning it into a community park, one of the residents, I says, hey, I want to know what your ideas and what you would like to see at the park. She was like, well, Christopher, I thought downtown made that decision. I didn't know that they would want, or I could make a suggestion. That was kind of baffling to me, but then it was also reality. You got two sides. How much has she done to research it? And then how much, besides myself, has the city notified her? I just see those two entities, and often it's like a magnet. They're going opposite. The city has so many millions of dollars, and they can use that vehicle. It's called the Community Engagement Office. They could use that vehicle when used to its maximum to educate the residents. But this is one of the hurdles we've had. Whenever we have our neighborhood meetings, we have someone from the community engagement come out. Their main focus, at least for us, have been to tell us the difference between a brown trash can and then the blue recycling. And after the third visit, we told them, hey, we appreciate it, but we need more on that bone than to talk about a recyclable. But things come from the city, the mayor on down, and you can tell what's a priority and what's not a priority. And when you're in underserved communities, day in and day out, you're steady fighting. That's one of the reasons I decided to run for District 8. I'm tired of being overlooked and the residents. We pay our taxes. We're homeowners. We're stakeholders. So why are we not being heard? And I'm gonna say this, and I want to hear from y'all. City of Fort Worth loves saying we're the 14th, 15th fastest growing city in the US. Do you know what a privilege that is to say that? But where are we in how we treat our citizens and discrimination? Oh, we don't want to talk about that. But with the other things, hey, we're the 14th, 15th fastest growing. And then with the injustice, where are we at on that list? And that's one of the things that gets me. But I want to hear from y'all. Anybody?
I wanted to go back to Lindsay's point. She was talking about they had reached out to the residents about the expo. I just wanted to know how they reached out to the residents and how far from Texas Wesleyan they went to reach out. I live 10 blocks from Texas Wesleyan. And I just wanted to know if that reach had gone that far down.
That's a good question, Lindsay.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far it went out. We did have flyers. We had people who did walk the neighborhood. We tried to spread the word through local businesses. I know some students, myself included, we did go out, not probably just a few, maybe 3 within a 3-block radius of the campus. But that is what we were able to do on our own. And it is a little bit harder, as I've talked with Christopher and Lawrence before, that we don't live in the neighborhood. So we don't know it as well as the local residents do, even though we try to be a part of it at the campus and branching out. So we are limited in some of those ways. But we tried the best we could, and that's barring COVID being over, that's hopefully a yearly thing that Dr. Simons intends to keep up and keep going. So the more we do it, the more we learn, and the better we can do it the following time.
Good.
Okay.
Good. Did she answer your question, Ms. Valerie?
Yes, she did.
Shirley?
Yes, I'm curious as to whether, and this just shows my ignorance, of course, whether the people within the neighborhood have access to this kind of a forum, as far as Wi-Fi, as far as computers. I know everybody on earth probably has a cell phone of some kind, but that was one question I had. I don't know who can answer that. One other thing, while I'm allowed to talk a minute, back to the statement about the homeless lady and the police department. I thought I've seen the earlier session the second session and the first session. I didn't sit all day, but I have sat almost all day and watched this. And I think it's fascinating and very interesting. And the word that comes to me is the word trust. I think that homeless people, these are such broad generalizations, and I don't know whether they're correct or not. This is all just my opinion too, and just my observation. But is trust. Do homeless people trust the police department? Does the police department trust that homeless people are gonna not attack them or whatever? I think it's a huge gap in communication, and boy, that makes it sound so simple, doesn't it? But I think trust is at the center of so much of this. And again, that's my Pollyanna, white-skinned, middle class view. So that's my deal.
I'm gonna find out about the Wi-Fi access. I would say pretty much the neighborhood, the residents I have talked to, Shirley, and know, pretty much they have Wi-Fi's and equal internet access. So, and then the part, does anybody else want to come in? I still want to.
Like to?
Yes, Mrs. Bryant.
I kind of like to touch on two things. One with Ms. Young, you mentioned permanent supportive housing. Our homeless neighbors, they're predominantly all over here on the east side of town. Been over here for like 41 years. And each time with the homeless, when they're looking for housing or a place to put women's, children's, infants, or whatever, they continue to move and push towards the east side. I've always, and I voiced this to our city leaders, that I believe that our entire city should share in dealing with our homeless neighbors, not just on the east side of town. And they continue to do that often. Our homeless neighbors have nowhere to go. They need to find a place or housing for them to go, but every part of the city should share in that, not just the east side. And Miss Shirley, you mentioned about, do they trust the police? No, they don't. They don't trust the police. This is merely my opinion, being over here for 41 years and dealing with our homeless. There's the old Colonial Manor nursing home that's right here on Beach. They were trying to make, back in 2012, they were trying to make a homeless shelter there. Well, for me, that was right in my front yard. And I talked to the gentleman, his name was Toby, I can't think of his last name, but Toby is his first name. He was saying, he was trying to assure me that it was going to only be for women's, infants, and children, and no men. Where there's women and infants, there's also men. And I told him that. But I did say that we all, again, should share in finding a place as far as housing for the homeless, the entire city, not just the east side. And if you've noticed that, like I said, they continue to push the homeless towards the east side. And this is prime real estate over here. People want to be over here. Yeah. How many of you, if you're still on the east side, are calling saying, do you want to sell your house?
Yeah.
You want to sell your house? Yeah, okay. Yeah. No, I don't. Yeah. But I'm just saying that we need everyone to share in the homeless, the entire city, not just the east side of town. So that's really my take on it.
Good. Very well said.
I had something to say as well.
Okay.
Everyone has said stuff so beautifully. Um, but I was going back to the policing situation, and someone mentioned the other day about when police would come into our community, the police officers would know the neighbors. They would know the people that were in the community, so they had a relationship. So it's not only communication, not only just trust, but building a relationship. When you have a relationship with someone, then you're able to tell them, Bobby, now you know you're not supposed to be on this property. Can you move off the property? And
Yeah.
so building that relationship, when you have police officers that know the people in their community, know where they are, then they can communicate better with them because they have built that relationship, which also comes along with the trust. And so I believe that's part of the issue, that there's no relationship. You have police officers that don't know us or don't know the community. And I'm not saying that's all, but quite a few, they just are put in that position to go to that community. And it's like, I'm here, I fear for my life, which is understandable because that's the idea or the representation that has been put forward. I know when I was in at Texas Wesleyan, I was under Dr. Horsfall as my one of my professors, and she I think she wrote a book, and it was called was dealt with the white flight. That was one of the things that was talked about, the white flight, how the Caucasian people were in Poly area, and then they kind of migrated out because of the African American people moving into the area. Now, of course, there's a lot of Hispanics, so it's kind of like that migration because nobody wants to deal with each other. And so I believe that the trust and the relationship, if that's built, it can kind of help us to kind of solve some of these issues. So that's my thoughts.
And and I'll say, Jameli, when you were saying about the police uh, being in the community, that's what I was saying earlier, the importance of an NPO, neighborhood police officer. Either you're gonna have a good one that's really invested and he really cares about the resident, which those are the minority, but most of them, it's just a job. Unfortunately, one of the things that we experienced, there was a lady with mental issues, and that goes back into, do you believe there's a problem? She had mental issues, so we called the NPO, he got her. I followed up, I was like, so what's the course of action? He said, I'm gonna take her over to another area where another officer will have to deal with her. So at that point, you're moving her from one place to another, not taking care of it. And then it goes into another issue. The police, they're not trained and they don't deal well with when there's that's where mental health, mental wellness comes in, where the city needs to invest more. Because again, he just wanted to dump her elsewhere and he was done with it. That just showed me kind of where we're at when you think about the NPOs, the people not doing their job.
Also dealing with, you were saying, the mental illness, that is a big issue, and I've been very aware of that. I was in Arizona for a while, for about 2 years, and I worked at a behavioral health center. And so I think Arizona, the state of Arizona, had to push for that. They have a lot of mental uh, illness facilities because they got in trouble for some things. But I think that's the biggest thing, that we as a people are not aware that people do have issues, and we need to be more aware of what's going on with people in order to know how to deal with it. I'm a special education teacher in the Fort Worth ISD, and so I've become more enlightened on how people act and what goes on in people's mind, and it starts as children. And so if you don't identify it then and deal with it then they become adults, and they act or react to certain things, and then they end up get killed because people are not understanding that this has been going on for this long, and all of a sudden you want to acknowledge it. So it needs to be dealt with at an early age, so people can get the help that they need. And so when they do become adults, it can be, not everything is going to be perfect, but it can be dealt with a little bit more. They can have a people can have an understanding, okay, this person, like once again, going back to relationship, this person right here, you know what's going on with her, so we have to deal with her this way. And so even though police don't feel like it's needed, but that training is needed in order to help them understand and identify if someone does have a mental illness or if they're just acting, you know, just out because that's what they want to do. So it does, mental illness is an issue, another issue that has to be dealt with. And unfortunately, we're not dealing with it in the right way. We want to just push it to the side in some cases. So
Very well said, and I agree. So did everyone answer the question, get a chance to answer? Do you believe that there is a problem? If you didn't get a chance and you want to make a comment, raise your hand. Dennis.
Okay, so which one? So
You.
okay. There are a few things that keep going through my mind, and I think that all of you have spoken very eloquently to the problem that I also see that exists, and but there's a few things that keeps playing through my mind that I feel like I should share. One is I am a firm believer that if you want to know an organization's priorities, look at their budget, right? And what they choose to spend money on is reflective of what their priorities are. It's the same idea of if you want to know an individual's priorities, look how they spend their time, right? And so I think that touches on some of what I've heard. I think the other another thing that comes to mind is the dehumanization that happens to people constantly, and I think that bias and prejudice is the precursor to dehumanizing an individual. And so when we talk about this lady who was homeless, and or Christopher, you shared the story where somebody said, well, I'm gonna take this individual to someone else. They're not seeing the person, they're seeing the problem, and that is a dehumanizing action. And I think that's problematic, right? And I think that even in the language that we choose to use, how often do we use people first language, right? It's not a person who is homeless, it's a homeless person. Or and I think that also speaks to where our own mindsets, right, or society's mindsets, depending on how widespread it might be, and I think that can lead to that can be part of that problem. The other and the last thing, and I apologize if I get too geeky. I am
Oh,
an
no, no,
academic.
you're good.
There, the author of if y'all have heard of Robert Greenleaf, he coined servant leadership decades ago, and that is a theory that really informs who I am in my professional life. That through roles of leadership, I believe it's my job to serve the people that I am quote unquote leading, right? And one of the tenets of servant leadership.
Dennis, can you speak up a little bit?
Absolutely. I'm so sorry. Is that better?
Oh, yes.
Okay. One of the tenets of servant leadership is that leaders should be evaluated on how the least privileged are treated in their society, right? And when we think about people in positions of authority and power and privilege, I have a hard time when the least privileged in our society are the ones suffering the most, right? And I think that to hold a mirror up to us and really evaluate ourselves, I think there's a lot of work to be done, and I know that that's going to be for future expos, but I do think that's part of the problem as well, is we've lost that idea of what it means to be part of a community, what it means to be servant leaders within that community, and what service to your fellow person really means. But yeah, so those are some of the things that kept running through my mind while listening to all of you, and I've really appreciated hearing everybody's thoughts too. Thank you.
Awesome. Very well said. It brings us to the second question. What do you believe is the cause of the problem? Oh, I'm sorry. Dennis, the professor, did you have something?
No, actually, that's no, just Dennis is fine. Thank you. No problem. Actually, exactly what I was gonna say could be a response to your second question. So
okay.
So it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
So I on the previous session, and actually it's nice to go after Dennis Hall, because he mentioned service, right, and servant leadership. The question in the other session was framed around whether police officers were public servants, right?
Yes.
And how they saw themselves. And to me, it was interesting that, you know, the common sort of phrase that is used across the country, I think, is to serve and protect, right? And that is in my mind, I think it's a hierarchical sort of relationship on both sides of the phrase, right? That to serve, it's, you know, really about humility, right? And it puts you as a servant to somebody else. And to the protector, which my sense is that a lot of police officers see themselves as doing some sort of protecting people, protecting the public well-being, or protecting something, which puts them in a position of authority. And so, you know, I think that may be part of the problem. You know, even as I was listening to Lindsay, right, describe the you know, how the surveys went out and the word got out to the community, and her sort of stating that she actually doesn't live in the neighborhood, as neither do I, right? And I think that though the intentions are good, that it makes it more difficult, right? And so I'm reminded of a book that I read by David Brooks, in which he talks about, you know, the 4 commitments that one has to make to live a sort of fulfilled, you know, good life. And it's commitment to your vocation, commitment to your family, you know, spouse, children, and so on. Commitment to your spiritual life. For many of us, that's religion or philosophy. And then commitment to your community. And I think that is the one that's the conflict, right? That the vocation of the police is in conflict with the commitment to community. And I think a lot of times that's because they serve in communities that they're not a part of. And when you don't know the other people that you're working with alongside, then it becomes a hierarchical relationship instead of me being part of my community and you being my neighbor, as opposed to being somebody I need to protect, right? So then we're fighting for the same things, and we're partners, we're neighbors, you know, we're taking care of each other. And my sense is that a lot of the issues arise out of that it's not a horizontal sort of relationship, that is really quite vertical, I think, in hierarchical. And so, you know, I don't know if there's obviously a quick solution to something like that, but to even think about police departments requiring people that, you know, or hiring people that live in their cities, right? And so many, I think of the police officers that eventually, you know, move to the suburbs, move to other neighborhoods, right? And so they're not serving in the communities that they're a part of. And so it's really hard to build trust to some of the points of the other very eloquently statements from the ladies on the panel. So the trust issue, I think it's fundamental, and it's really hard to do that when you're an outsider, and when you are also, again, it's a hierarchical position, right? Where, you know, to serve, you really have to deal with your pride and humility, right? To see yourself as a servant. And so a lot of times it might be easier to see yourselves as a protector, even though you may be doing some harm. I'll be quiet.
Very well said, Dennis. Rachel, did you have a question? Welcome, Rachel.
Can she hear us?
Rachel, can you hear us?
No, I'm kind of having still some technical difficulties, but I'm listening. But thank you.
Okay. So Dennis kind of started it with answering the second question. What do you believe is the cause of the problem? Anybody wants to comment?
I just want to comment, piggyback on Dennis's last comment there. Just a little fact for everybody to know. The Fort Worth Police Department has a contract with the city of Fort Worth. And every 4 years, that contract is renegotiated. And so they just renegotiated that contract this past September. And the what you just spoke about, living in the city, the requirement, there used to be within the contract, there was an incentive built into the contract for officers to live in the city of Fort Worth. In other words, when you apply to become a police officer, and you go through, the interview process, you would get extra points if you lived in the city of Fort Worth, for all the reasons that you described, Dennis. However, in this last renegotiation, they did away with that incentive. Okay, so that means the city and the Police Officers Association agreed that they would do away with that incentive. So now there is no incentive for police officers to live in the community that they serve. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there and let you guys know what's going on.
I appreciate that, Pam. Were any of y'all aware of that?
Nope.
I was not aware of it.
I think I've heard that before. I didn't realize that they did away with it though.
One of the things when I met with, there was a meeting with probably about 15, 20 police officers here in Poly and the commander. I brought it up at the time because I read it in another state and it was successful. When you've got officers that live in the community, guess what? When the shifts end and they're going back into the community that they live in and serve, they've got an incentive. I brought that up and either they were playing naive or they didn't understand what I was saying. The response I got, well, if we lived in a neighborhood and they see the police car, then we're targets. I said again, I was like, this has already not only been done, it's something that's doable. And when they was going that route, I was like, are they trying to spin my mind saying you can't live in the neighborhood? That's foolish. But anyway, that was the response that I got. And then the second thing I suggested to them, because I live right around the corner from the main substation on Nashville. I recommended to the officers and the commander, have the officers, I noticed they're on horses, get the ones with the horse to ride through the neighborhood. You're letting the 5 and 6-year-old, you're letting them see a different side of the police. I really didn't get anywhere with that, unfortunately. But I was trying to make it, the only time they see the police is when they're beating someone down or they're going on the highway to write speeding tickets. And they're just whizzing through the neighborhood. Sometimes they're driving faster than teenagers, and that's not good. But again, I tried to suggest having people to move in. And then once Pam said they've taken that incentive out, you're already sending a message right there when you take that incentive out of where you stand with that. Anyone else want to comment?
Well, they're on it.
Oh, somebody else. Oh,
Uh,
oh,
Go ahead.
oh, okay. Just a quick here about living in your community and making things better. I taught in my community. I could walk to my school. I lived in the neighborhood. That made a difference in my classroom. That made a difference in my behavior in my classroom. And the other teachers that came from other communities, they wondered, why you have such a good handle on your children, a good classroom management in your class. I don't ever see you struggling. I don't ever see you seeing anybody to the office or anything. And I would tell them, I would see them at Dollar Tree. I would see you. So they knew that I could come and knock on the door, didn't have no problem, you know. And then I had some of their parents. They went to the same school, so then I had their children. So it made a difference in the community when you had a relationship with your students or with your persons that are there. And they respect that and they know that something can be done because you're right there in that community. So it makes a difference.
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Lady Paula. Who was
So-
Lindsay? I'm sorry, Mrs. Bryant. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mrs. Bryant.
I wanted to mention that I'm the president of our neighborhood association, and my husband and I are the only people of color in my neighborhood association. And if you would, I say it like this, and I carry the top slot. And I was the one that started the neighborhood association, and most of our members are all senior citizens and have been in the neighborhood like 80 plus years. I've only been in the neighborhood 41 years, but they were born in the neighborhood, grew up in the neighborhood, went to the schools in the neighborhood. I'm from the west side. I went to school in Como. Yes, Como. No. And they went to school here, and I became the president. And another thing, and my husband is the treasurer. Like I said, top slots, but we're the only people of color. I said that to say that a lot of not knowing about each other is just ignorance.
Yeah.
It's just ignorance. I just want to mention just a few minutes, just to show you, to tell you a story. The one of the members, and he's like, Mr. Wilson is, I guess he's 87, and he was complimenting me, saying, Shirley, you know, I really do appreciate all the things you've done for our community. And you know, there was another little colored girl that was just like you that I remember. She was good as well. And I said, oh yes, Mr. Wilson, well, what color was she? And he said, oh, she was just a little shade lighter than you. Well, you know what? I smiled and I said, Mr. Wilson, you know, you're the only one that get away. Right. I said, because my mother, back in the day, you know, you wouldn't call, you know, if you called her black, that was offensive.
Yeah.
And she'd tell you, I'm not black, I'm colored.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Back in that day.
Yeah.
I came up in the day of say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Like this. But I said all that to say that our members, I love them with all of my heart.
Yeah.
And they've been in this neighborhood. And Lindsay got a chance to interview all of us.
Yeah.
And I believe that she enjoyed it tremendously.
She did.
Because we were able to tell her, but a lot of our seniors don't have Wi-Fi and computers and all of that. And I'm going to take this back to all of them and tell them what has taken place. But I will say this, that they're voters. They have a voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do my best to try to make sure that they're heard, regardless of the color of their skin, or how old they are, or what walk of life they came from.
Yeah.
Because this America, even this city that we live in, is a coat of many colors. But we're all Americans and we're all Fort Worthians, all of us. And it's important that we do it as a unit. You know, many hands make the burden light. So I just want to say that that's our neighborhood association, PEB, and we're right down the street from Wesleyan and right up the street from Christopher and right up the street from William James, and I mean we're in the center of it all. And if there's anything that I can do to make it better, Miss Young, you know, Miss Valerie, Miss Shirley, Miss Pope, Christopher. Yeah. I mean, that's what I want to do. That's why I'm here with you guys today, listening in. So, you know, we got a neighborhood association, And like I said, I'm in their top slot, but they're just like me. So I just wanted to throw that in there, if y'all didn't mind. Thanks.
I almost need a tissue, Mrs.
Oh,
Bryant. I mean, seriously, that's we missed that. That's community.
Yeah.
For the longest, and I'll say this, then we're gonna get to Shirley. Certain people within the city, within District 8, made it a point not to connect the residents, and that just seemed so foreign to me. Before I reached out to Mrs. Bryant, because her Poly Neighborhood Association and ends and PEB begins. And they just saying, you know, you don't need to talk to her. There are different people over there. And then I got to thinking, wait a minute, biblical, get to know your neighbor. I need to know her for myself. You can say all these things, but I need to meet her face to face. And once I meet her, then I can come to my own conclusions. And a community project brought us together. I contacted her. And when I tell you, we talked, sweet as she can be, and it was opposite of what the city said. And I put,
you ain't got it.
yeah. I just love this. It's real. But essentially, we were able to get together. A city issue brought us together, and we've been together ever since. And that's what it's all about. I'm in contact with about up to probably eight different neighborhood associations. And it's like, I call it porch talk. We just get to talking and we find out what the problems are. We take them to city council, but that's another story. They hit a roadblock, and that's the reason I'm running to get beyond that roadblock. Because we have a great community. So anyway, Shirley, you were next.
Me, Shirley? Gosh, I am so glad to be a part of this. I just love hearing it all. Y'all are all just incredible people. Almost forgot what I was gonna say whenever I said I wanted to say something. So it's gonna change the subject a little bit. Back to what can maybe be done about, this great divide between the police department and human beings. I think I say this somewhat, excuse me, don't X me out, please, somewhat in defense of the police department, in the same way as in defense of teachers, which I am was one, still am one, I guess. Teachers are expected to teach children everything they know, right? Teachers are expected to teach them manners, teach them how not to fight, how not, teachers, that's your job.
Yeah.
Okay, same way with police departments. You are expected to deal with all people. Okay, I know for a fact that it's not the same as one of the ladies said earlier. It's not the same dealing with a special needs adult as it is dealing with somebody being stopped for, but I don't know, speeding or whatever. And special needs people have special needs. People with mental illness have mental illness. They cannot be dealt with in the same way. They need special care. And here we're expecting all police to know how to do it all. And that's huge. That's huge. Now, I'm not saying that they're not willing to. I'm not saying they don't want to. But I do think it's a huge, huge responsibility. And they need to be trained. They definitely need to be trained. And I know that in the special needs community, there is beginning to be more training for police officers to be able to deal with children. Well, no, with anybody who has autism. And there, you know, I hear inklings of things where police departments are being taught about mentally ill people. But then you see these awful things on television of people with those diagnoses or with those labels or whatever they are being shot in the back or shot in front or whatever. So I think it comes down to training. I think it comes down to understanding. I think it comes down to so many things that to me just seem overwhelming. I don't even, I'm an older person. I'm the oldest person on this panel. I feel sorry. I don't know what the answers are, but it's groups like this, it's conversations like this that are going to make a difference. God, I didn't think I'd cry.
Oh.
So I want to thank all of you guys for everything that you're doing, not just for your community, but for humanity, period. It's incredible. It's incredible. You're good people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shirley. Shirley, Lawrence says you're part of that group.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
No, I'm gonna share something with the audit with the panel. Do you remember, Shirley? For those you don't know, I have an empty lot, and I wanted to do a neighborhood garden, and this was like 3 or 4 years ago. No, I'm bad with timing.
Way more than that.
No, Lawrence just shouted 10 years. I'm bad with timing, I'll admit. So Lawrence says 10 years ago, I call up Shirley. Christopher, I don't know what I can do, but I'll be there. When I tell you little kids came from the neighborhood, Shirley set up a little table on this empty lot. I think you were teaching them how to just plant something in a planter, a little seed.
Yeah.
You're not from the neighborhood, and I'm just being real here. Shirley knows I'm in Poly. She could have easily said, Christopher, at this point, I just don't feel comfortable coming there. She could have said that, and it would have been what it was. She didn't. What do you need me to do? And she showed up on the lot. And again, you had the kids coming. And she is a mother. She used her maternal instinct to connect with people that weren't her kids. That's what community is all about. Doing what you can with what you got. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, let me remind you too, give a shout out to Liz Ward from West End. She was there that day and fed hot dogs to the neighbors.
She did. I forgot about that. Yeah. Yes. She's a professor at Texas Wesleyan as well. Right. So what do you believe, I'll repeat it, what do you believe is the cause of the problem? Shirley gave a great definition. Does anybody else want to come in?
I wrote down a couple of things that I wanted to say, but I think a lot of you, we're all hitting kind of on the same areas in different perspectives, but I think overall, kind of what Dennis Hall was saying in response to the other question, that we need commitment to the community, we need accountability for the community, and that goes along with training as well, like Shirley was saying. Each police department in each city is trained differently. And so there's no like universal training that they go through. And I think if enough people like we're doing here and with the city council and the movements that are happening, if they all come together and say, well, I want my city to be different, and really advocate for that new training. In Arlington, there's Dalworthington Gardens. Page Pantego area. And there's a teacher who goes to the police department who her son has special needs. And she goes and she talks to them about the signs that someone might exhibit if they have special needs that you can visually recognize. Sorry, my cat is joining me. That you can visually recognize pretty quickly to know that they do have special needs and can approach them appropriately. The other thing I wrote down was the disconnect. Again, sorry, move out of my way. The disconnect not only between like city leaders and the residents, so you have the high and then what some people consider the low, those who are suffering from homelessness. But you also have the disconnect because I know when we first started, Christopher, you said there's like 100 and something homeowner associations in Fort Worth alone. And no one was really talking to each other. And I know you've been working on that greatly and you've been successful to like 8 or 9 of them and you're starting to gain weight with that. But you still have all the others that have no idea what you're trying to do. Everyone's trying to work to improve the city in their own one little way that you end up fighting against each other, trying to get what you're wanting accomplished. And it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But no one's really working on it together in numbers and in force to reinforce that this is what the city really wants and what they need. So it's kind of the same thing, just said a different way.
Very well said. Stacy, and then I have a feeling Rachel might want to come in. Stacy.
So kind of piggybacking off of Lindsay, I was always brought up with the phrase actions speak louder than words. So the first course obviously is dialogue, and we are obviously still having issues with dialogue between certain parties. So it's hard to have change whenever only one side is speaking and the other side is not listening. So the fact that we're getting enough people together to make an action will put more force behind it. And like Lindsay said, once we get more homeowners associations involved, that just increases the numbers. And in the long run, these people are voted in.
Yeah.
So they need to know, again, I always tell people, before politics was just like, hey, you're going to go serve your community and then you're going to go back to work.
Yeah.
It's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
People try and make it a career. So once people realize, hey, that's still an option, you're going to have to go be blue collar again eventually. That fear will hopefully help create action. So again, actions speak louder than words. So whenever she said they've taken that Fort Worth incentive out, that's an action, that's a choice. And everyone has a choice. No matter what it is, you have a choice. It might not be a good choice, but you still have a choice. So you're looking at what choices are they making and what is that saying to the community? And then we need to make sure that we're presenting what they're saying. That way they know how it's perceived. So that's the big, I think, communication barrier we're going to be having.
Very well said, Stacy. Rachel, did you have anything to say?
I'm still having, I'm so sorry.
No.
The volume is going in and out. So, but I can hear, but I'll pass, but thank you. But it's great. And everyone has said some wonderful things, what I've heard. And I appreciate being invited, and I'll certainly hope to continue being invited and look forward to this again when I get all my little bugs worked out here on the telephone. But thank you.
Yes, I appreciate that, Rachel. Does anybody else want to say? Just raise your hand if you had a comment. Okay, Valerie.
The people that are elected in, let's say, our district, District 8, the things that we're talking about tonight, aren't they supposed to be speaking for us? I thought that's the reason that we elect them there. Going back to your comment about the police in the neighborhood, and they were talking about them not feeling safe. They're in other neighborhoods. The police cars are in the driveway.
Yeah.
I have visited other neighborhoods and the police cars are there. I'm not sure if they're saying in our neighborhood they wouldn't feel safe with the police car there,
Right.
because we know that it's there, and that's in Fort Worth.
Right.
So even though the incentive was taken out, they're still in the neighborhood. They know that the policeman is down the street. So I'm not sure if that's what they're talking about as far as them not feeling safe with a police car being seen. As far as the horses go, when we moved to the area and there was crime against older Caucasian women, when the sun went down, horses were going up and down the street, and we could hear them because they wouldn't drive the police cars down the street. They would ride the horses down the street, and you could hear them because they were trying to catch that person that was committing crimes against older Caucasian women. And so there are other avenues, like you said, and like we all have said, there are other avenues for them to be part of the neighborhood if they choose to. And some people are not going to do it if they're not told to do it. And that's part of the problem as well. And the last thing, and I'll just stop talking.
No, you're good.
We talk about defunding the police, and a lot of people don't understand what that means. It's not paying the police a salary. That extra money, because they get extra money in addition to their salary given to them. And the governor of Texas said that if the cities defunded the police, that they were going to, I think, lose some funding or something. I may have that all wrong, but a lot of people don't understand that extra money can be used to train them in mental health, train them in how to police other than using a gun and taking people's lives.
Yes. Very, very well said. I agree wholeheartedly with you. It's transparency is a big part of it. And one of the things before, we still have a little bit of time, but before the night's over with, Pam is gonna make recommendations on what we can do moving forward. And also is sharing this information with your neighbors. Because just think about it, we're all residents of Tarrant County. So we have elected officials. And like we've mentioned before, if the person's not doing a good job, vote them out. Sometimes that's the last resort for a lot of people. You keep telling them over and over, we're not happy, and they just look the other way. One of the things that bothers me at city council, when Mike Moncrief was mayor, you could go up to the city podium, you could voice your concern, and then they gave you a response back. Now how it is presently, I call it roll call. You go up there, Betsy calls your name, the resident's not even starting to talk to the mic, and she's preparing to call up the next person. So you automatically, I get the message that we're doing the motion, and it's documented that we heard the resident. And notice I said the keyword, we heard the resident at the mic, not we responded or we are giving a solution or feedback. So that's something that if I'm elected, it needs to turn back around where it's put back into the power of the citizens, where they can go to the mic, city council will hear them and make a comeback, a comment back, and where it's not one way, it needs to be a two-way. And so that's one of the things that I noticed that there is a problem within the local government. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Christopher,
Yes.
yes, the making it clear about when you say defund the police. When that term was first used,
Yeah.
I myself didn't know what that entailed. I didn't know what they really meant, and I feel like there's a lot of other people that don't know what that is as well. When you say defund
Yeah.
the police,
Yeah.
I'm on the City of Fort Worth Chiefs Advisory Board.
Yes.
And I have voiced my opinion many times to the chief. And does everybody know that the chief is retiring?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
Kraus.
He's leaving. In my opinion, he's a really good guy. He's done some things that the other police chiefs have not done since Chief Wilburn, and he was gold as far as I was concerned, Wilburn. They defunding them. I didn't realize that they were talking. I was talking about thinking they was talking about just doing away with their salaries, just
Right. Right.
Yeah, there was no one that explained that.
Right.
That I heard personally.
Yeah.
To let me know exactly what that exactly meant. And I believe that there's still a lot of people yet that do not know what that means.
Yeah.
On the police. If they just just kind of broke it down. Just let me break it down for me instead of saying defund, say, hey, look, it's like this. And just break it down. I think that people would have understood it a whole lot better. But right now, defunding the police is out there, and everybody's looking at is take everything away, all the money, don't give them nothing, just strip them of everything. That's what it looks to me. So I think that if they were just a little bit clearer on the terminology, it would be a lot better, and at least it would help me.
Pam?
I just, since it's been brought up twice, I definitely want to chime in on defunding police. And I agree that there has been a lot of misinterpretation, misunderstanding, confusion around the term. And the thing that's important, whenever we hear anything, right, is to do our own research, right? So we can know for ourselves, what does this mean? It's confusing me. Like, okay, let me look it up and find out what are the origins, what are the roots, what does it mean? And I hope that, I'm just going to share with you guys my definition tonight and what I've learned as being just a student of abolition, modern day abolition and social justice. And I hope that we can all understand it, because it's really simple. It's basically what we've been talking about the whole night. We've been talking about defunding the police this entire conversation. President Slavak, you started it off by talking about how, we need to start funding, or we need to give more attention to, we don't need to burden the police with all these jobs that they don't need to do, that they're not trained to do. But we need to enlist other professionals. And I heard somebody else say, we need to train the police on mental health, and we need to train them on how to de-escalate without using a gun. But we can continue to train. We've been training the police for quite a long time. They've been in existence. It's time for us to actually take those resources and put them back in the hands of professionals who are mental health professionals, right? Who are substance use professionals, who can help people get permanent, supportive housing instead of calling the police because there's a homeless person somewhere where you don't want them to be, or a person who is homeless. I like that, people first. A person who is homeless. Why don't we reach out to the professionals who can actually help solve the problem? So the definition that I have for defunding is defunding the police means divesting funds from the police department and reallocating those funds into non-police forms of public safety and community support. That's what it is. It is not blowing up the police station and just moving on. But it's saying, most cities have a police budget that is between 30 and 50% of their entire city's budget, some of them even higher. We're saying slash that budget and put it into services, into non-police forms of public safety and community support. When we think about public safety, so many times, the first thing that comes to our mind when we think of public safety is what? The police.
Mhm.
You know, like, what is public safety? Okay, it's the police. No, it's not. It's more than that. Public safety is ending food deserts or food apartheid, having a grocery store. When people are food poor, that makes folks desperate when you're hungry, okay? And you're gonna do what you need to do to get food on the table for your family. What else is public safety? It's having, parks, recreation, a place where people can go and breathe and look at nature and feel at peace in their own community. That adds to public safety. And we could go on and, if y'all want to drop some things in the chat, what does public safety mean to you? What are some things that make you feel safe? Then that's what public safety is. We've done some community sessions down at the Justice Center, and we asked this question to groups of people, and very rarely, if ever, is police one of the things that people mention as what makes them feel safe. It's always, better lighting, or getting to know my neighbors, different things like that. So that is what defunding the police is. Again, it's simply divesting funds from the police department and reallocating those funds into non-police forms of public safety and community support.
Thank you, Ms. Young.
I like
Thank
that.
you for sharing that. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank
All right, Pam, don't let me find out you're trying to run for 8
Christopher,
I live in 9
jump?
currently.
No,
I work in 8, live in 9.
But that's what I like. You're a go-to, but go ahead, Dennis. You were gonna.
Okay, Pamela, that's great. You're saying exactly what was on my mind. I think we have to think about safety in a much bigger, broader sense, right? And me coming from an architecture background, we're concerned about the built environment and how that contributes to the sense of security, safety, well-being for all people, right? And so this is also a chance for us to plug the project that we're going to be working on over the next year, to try to hear from everybody so that we can think about ways that Poly Heights can become something that the neighborhood and the neighbors want, right? And I'll say a story about what my children. I grew up in the north side of Fort Worth, and I spent most of my since 9 years old to about 18, and I go back as often as I can, and I go with my children, my wife, and my wife is also. I'm also from Honduras. I'm Central American, and so when I go to the north side, it feels good because I can talk to the people. I have friends, families of my friends that are still over there, and on one of these, 10 years ago or so, driving around to a restaurant, with our 2 little girls at the time, they finally asked from their car seat on the back, and they said, as they're looking out the window, they said, "Papi, is this where poor people live?" And then so we looked at, and this is sort of like a 3-year-old, right? And so we sort of, we laughed and we said, my wife and I said, this is where Papi used to live. This is where he grew up. And then my daughter said, "Papi, were you poor?" And that somebody that young can understand the differences between, the built environment and what that means in one neighborhood or another one, and where they grew up and where they're growing up here in the center of around UTA in Arlington. I thought it was sort of, fascinating to me. And we also laughed about it because at the time we said, well, it's funny that our daughters don't realize that they're still poor, that we're not rich, but they don't know that. So that's great. But to me, that was we thought, you know, that some neighborhoods, that even children can understand that, and that we can improve, and we should have the same standard and the same things that whatever we consider to be good to make things safer should be everywhere, right? And so while the politicians are a few, I think, and maybe the options to deal with the police and all these other things are few. I think that the people that live here are many, right? And that together there's got to be a way that we can actually make this much better. So yeah, the built environment, that's I think lighting, you know, sidewalks, you know, places that are walkable, you know, parks, public spaces that are inclusive, and to do all of that without you know, for the people that are there, so that as more people are attracted to this, when it becomes beautiful, or it is already beautiful, I'm sure, to the people that live there, but whoever the people that come out and come from other places and see it, that it doesn't displace, and it actually, this is for the people that are here, right? And so to do all of this and be equitable about it and to be inclusive, I think is key. But it's, yeah, it's much bigger than just policing, I think. So, okay, I'll be quiet now. Thank you.
No, you're good.
I agree.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I had one more comment.
Okay.
Again, like he said, it's much more than just policing.
Yeah.
I think it also, and then we were talking about, you know, the younger kids and everything. It needs to go like well into that. So, you know, health classes, financial, you know, education, all these little things help build a person up. So it also, you know, creates a healthier environment. So, but a lot of people don't get that, you know, when you're working 2 jobs, you don't have time to cook a meal, maybe a healthy meal every night. You know, you just go stop at somewhere or order something. So little tidbits of information and education classes will also slowly help bring that up to where you're improving their knowledge about every little thing, which will help improve public safety overall, because everything contributes to that. So, you know, it's like, you know, you start young.
I agree. In the Star Telegram, they put the zip code 76104.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which said that's what more people die in bad health. And y'all can't see, we have another member of the community from, she's helping with Zoom. Jerry, she's from Historic Southside, and that's in her area. And when you read that story and know that the city was given $1 million plus from the federal government to combat COVID, and everyone was affected by COVID, but Black and brown people were affected the most. Why aren't we knowing where that $1 million is going to? What portion of that is going to 76104? I mean, it's not rocket science. And again, it goes back to being active in your neighborhood association. If you're not an active member of your neighborhood association, please join. You can find out what neighborhood association you're in by doing City of Fort Worth, one city address. Once you type in your physical address, it's gonna pull up who your city councilman is, what district you're in, your commander, a lot of vital things, code enforcement officer, your trash day. And again, if you go to City of Fort Worth, and I'm not wording it, but if you put it in Google, it's gonna pull up Fort Worth one address. And again, it starts there. And what I want, because 76104, that's part of District 8. For the store, yes. For Star Telegram to be featuring that means city officials, they know about it. And again, if they got $1 million, they need to be putting some money to take that at the bottom, the deadliest zip code in Fort Worth, and bringing it out. And I know it's not gonna happen overnight, but if you don't address these things, they won't get taken care of. Because it breaks my heart. That's only a rock throw. And a church I go to with Lady Paula, First Lady, the church is in the historic South Side also. So even though she doesn't physically live here, she's committed to the neighborhood because the church is there as well. So we've got to do what we can and ask questions, right? Your city council, write the mayor, email them. What are y'all doing to combat the problem with 76104? But I digress. So does anyone else have any comment of what you believe is the cause of the problem?
I just wanted to ask a question about the funding of the police department. How would that look when you do that as defunding the police and giving others a chance to help? Like if you say you have social workers, you have mental facilities or whatever, how would that work? Would they ride along with the police? How would they look as if you do that as a defunding?
Pam, you want to answer that?
So what that looks like, again, it's moving the money from the police department budget and moving it to non-police budgets that are focusing on community support and different aspects of public safety. So that would simply mean, in the simplest terms, it would mean increasing other budgets, right? So you have the police department budget, and then you have the parks and recreation budget. Then you have the library budget. Then you have the affordable housing or the housing budget, right? So those budgets are lacking. They're going without. But we have one pie, right? One bucket of money, and the city budget shows us how it's divided up. So we're not adding more money to the bucket or the pie. We're just moving it to other areas that have been going without for too long. And instead of relying on the police department to solve all these problems, we're going to move money from the police and put it in those other departments that will actually solve the problems, right? See, police only respond to crime once it has already occurred. They don't stop crime, okay? They may solve crimes after they've happened, solve a case, but they do not prevent crime from happening. Again, what prevents crime from happening is resources in our community to make our community stronger. And so, like the things that Stacy was talking about, having the resources to be able to make a healthy meal for your family, that in and of itself, having the resources to make a healthy meal for your family, providing, food that is nutritious, that feeds your children's brains, and that does not leave them depleted. Well, guess what? When they go out into the community or to school, that's going to put them in a better position to not fall prey to some things that might end them up, get them, involved with the system, just from a nutritious meal. And beyond that, who's going to prepare that nutritious meal? Maybe their father could prepare it for them if he wasn't in jail, for criminal trespassing. So if they had permanent supportive housing, then they could eat together as a family at night with their father and their mother with a nutritious meal. But we're not funding those things. We're funding jails. We're funding
big business,
the district attorney's office, prosecutors. I don't know if you all know this. Tarrant County is the largest county in the nation that does not have a public defender's office.
Oh, wow.
We don't have one.
Wow.
I would
Those
ask
guess
that,
what we do have a district attorney's office.
Oh, wow.
once they get the funding, the police fund, or it's a separate entity, you're saying that, but how does that work? Say, for instance, not a policeman, and the situation is you have a ill person that you call the police on. So, but you yet have this entity, this resource. How does that work? Do they go out with the police? Do you call for that resource? police go out? How does that look?
So, and what needs to happen is the funds that we're pouring into the police department need to be started to, this is not an let me start there. This is not an overnight thing.
Right.
It will not happen like, oh, we decided we're going to defund the police, and then the next day everything's perfect. No, it is a process that is long overdue. And so in Eugene, Oregon, they have a program called Cahoots. And what that is it's a number that people can call when they have a mental health situation going on. Okay. When, there's a family member that's just over here, that maybe they're off their meds and the family just can't do anything with them and they need some support. Well, they don't call the police. They do not call 911. They call a different number, right? Yes. That everybody in that city knows it goes to Cahoots. And they have their own dispatch and everything.
Okay.
And so when they are called, they send out mental health professionals, not police with guns. And they go and they help those people. And the results that they have seen have been phenomenal. Okay. Less people going to jail, less people getting hurt by the police, less people hurting other people, more people getting the help that they need, and to stay healthy. So that is what that's what, in that process of defunding the police, we would want to build a program like Cahoots right here in Fort Worth, right? So that we would have a number that we could call. And also when 911 gets a call, or when the police department gets a call, they can code that call as, you know what, this is not for us. This needs to go over to Cahoots. We don't need to send our officers out there. We're trying to solve this crime that happened. We need to send the Cahoots people out to that for everybody's safety and well-being. So that's a good example.
So that's why I was asking for, and that you answered my question, because I want to know how would this look, with the police, who would you call for help if it was not a crime or violence or shooting? Who would you call with this extra money or this resource called out for that person?
Right. And also, as a matter of fact, the Fort Worth Police Department in the city of Fort Worth, they just approved the budget for next year, 2021. That was approved at the city council meeting there at the end of September, as it is every year. And in that budget, in the police budget for 2021, they're actually doing some defunding. They're moving some resources. Well, I guess it wouldn't really be called defunding, but they're reallocating some resources within the Fort Worth Police Department budget to form a task force or a unit that would be civilians. It would not be sworn police officers, but it would be civilians who would respond to calls that do not need a sworn police officer. For instance, we live in Texas, right? So sometimes people's cattle gets loose. And, and I don't know if y'all have seen some of those pictures here lately with some cattle going across the highway. And typically what they would do is call the police to come out, right, and try and handle that, or the sheriff or whatever. But now they're going to have this non-police unit that can handle stuff like that, or that could handle, a motorist in distress, right? We don't need a person with a gun going there. We need somebody who can help, who can get the car keys out the car or whatever, So they're beginning to move in that direction. What we want them to realize is that they don't have to do it all themselves. It does not have to be housed within the police department. You can take that money out of the police department and let the police department actually focus on what their job is, right? And that's responding to crime and that's solving crime. but we can let other professionals and community organizations focus on keeping our community safe and making sure that everyone feels welcome, feels like they have what they need, and that problems are actually getting solved. And this, I won't go on because we're short on time, but if you just Google the city of Austin, how they've defunded and some of the measures that they've taken, Ms. Pope, you'll see some really good examples of practical ways that that's happening in the city of Austin.
You'd be surprised on how many people that don't know that. Just don't know that. Just what you told us.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's what that meant.
Yeah.
So many people don't know that.
Well, Mrs. Bryant, that's what gets me. Elected officials know all of this and know about it, and they don't share it. It's a chore to go and pull all that information out. Organizations that Pam's with, she's a go-to. She was the one that told me about the proposition. Hey, I'm gonna just say it for what it is. Some people in the city of Fort Worth officials, they slick. They was trying to get proposition passed without an opposition or explaining what it was. Why do we have a tanker? Did y'all know the 4th Police Department, we have a tanker, and also it's mine-proof. So that's for combat. Why do you have to ask yourself, why does the city of Fort Worth have a vehicle like that to run over mines? And that's made for war. And that's for citizens. It seems like that, it just doesn't make any sense. But they've spent our tax dollars on equipment like that. And had we not asked questions, they would continue. So I appreciate Pam, when she gave me that, she's like, Christopher, this is something we need to talk about, pass it on. And I've got the whole of Jerry. Before I knew it, Jerry had 10 neighborhood associations. And we were all coming together in the name of community, fighting for people who did not know about it. And I talked to Mrs. Bryant. She's like, Christopher, what do I need to do? So the information is out there. Unfortunately, until we get other people elected, we're gonna have to do our due diligence and keep going until it changes. I just want to thank everyone that's come and be a part of this. Again, President Slabaugh, you know, when we first started with Texas Wesleyan, it wasn't as smooth at the beginning, but over time, he's like, Christopher, what can we do? And I says, hey, our neighborhood meets. He says, the Baker Building, you know, y'all can make that happen. And then Dennis and different ones got on board. So again, I appreciate Slabaugh saying, hey, let's start what we need to do. And they've taken that up. So I appreciate that. And everyone that's been part of it. And Jerry and Lawrence, they've done a great job. Jerry, did you want to say anything? She was with the Zurich South Side. Come on. She's like, I need to get up. Yeah, they need to see you. And then I'll let Pam say anything. And then Lawrence, you don't need to say anything. Okay.
Okay. I just like to sound Geraldine Williams is my name, but everybody calls me Jerry, Miss Jerry. And I'm from the Historic Southside Neighborhood Association. I'm the secretary, and I really like collaborating, connecting up with people whose minds are all on the same page. Your mind not on the same page, you know, we just let you go on and do what you want to do. That's it. I mean, I started, I didn't know nothing about this kind of stuff and, you know, neighborhood association stuff. And I got into this whenever we did the gas leases. And I've been in it ever since. And this is usually the only position that I hold as secretary. But I like connecting people up, talking to different people. My niece, I'm gonna let y'all go, but my niece came here tonight and she was telling me, I didn't know y'all were doing this kind. I said, yeah, this is what we do. I need to get involved, and that's what we need to start doing, because I done got old, but I'm still going because I like doing the right thing. I'm about doing the right thing. We need to get more young people out to start doing, even for voting, everything, because we're getting older. We need to make them understand, hey, whenever we die, us old folk die, y'all gonna still be here. Somebody got to take it on. Thank you.
I just love me some Miss Jerry. But again, we could be here all night. It's just about like-minded people. So Dennis, how do you pronounce your last name? Because we had another Dennis, the architect, professor.
Yes.
Yes. So
Thank
Miss
you.
Jerry, Mrs. Bryant, Miss Valerie, those are some of the people that will be talking to you in the future that you wanted to hear from the neighborhood. So you already got a taste of it tonight. Awesome. And I'm putting more together.
Thank you so much.
So I just want to thank everybody. Thank you, Pam, for breaking things down. Did she not break things down for y'all?
Thank you, Pam. Thank you.
So we appreciate it. Is there anything else, Pam? Did you need to just tell them
I
about
have
the show?
one more plug.
Okay.
I just want to plug for everybody. And I'm gonna drop it in the chat right now. Please visit us at New Sheriff Now, tarrantcounty.org. We want to encourage everyone to, of course, to vote starting on October 13th. If you're doing a mail-in ballot, you should have received those in the mail already. And you can fill them out and just drive over to the elections office and drop that on in the box. You don't even have to put it in the mail if you're not trusting the mail right now. So you can drop it off as soon as you fill it out. Also, when we vote, we're going to not only be voting, excuse me, for a new president, but we're going to be voting for a new sheriff right here in Tarrant County. And we need a new sheriff right here in Tarrant County. 9 people have died at the Tarrant County Jail since April. 9 people. And out of those 9, only one of them died of COVID. Several of these people were the folks that we've been talking about tonight, folks with mental health issues, folks with physical health issues. There was one woman there who was mentally unstable and she was pregnant and they had jailed her. She gave birth to her baby all by herself in the jail cell, and her baby died 10 days later. This happened at Tarrant County Jail in May, right downtown in Fort Worth. We need a new sheriff. We need new leadership at the jail. Bill Wayburn is our current sheriff. It was his first term. It needs to be his last. And so we're asking everybody to please vote for the Democrat who's running against him, Vance Keys. He's a over 20-year veteran of the Fort Worth Police Department. He's actually a whistleblower within the Fort Worth Police Department. He stands up for truth and righteousness and justice. And that's exactly what we need down at the jail where the most vulnerable people in our city are. So thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome.
Any final, I just want to thank Lady Paula Pope. She's more than just a church. She's an advocate for the community. Part of my job at my church is to make announcements. I look over at my pastor because he's like, okay, we got a certain amount of time. And I go to First Lady. She's a Christian. If it's about the community, go up there and you say it. Pastor doesn't want me to say it. He's for the community too. But she knows if I'm gonna get up there and say something about the community, it's gonna be something that's beneficial. She wants us, she's concerned about our souls, but also as church, she wants us to be great stewards in the community. So I appreciate her for her support on that as well. And Pastor Pope. Does anybody else have anything to say?
No. Mrs.
Final
Van
remarks?
Nothing.
I think y'all need to go home. Some of y'all just still ready for more, right? Thank everyone. We'll update y'all when we have another one. Did someone say anything?
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you for Christopher.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome, Valerie.
Christopher.
Next will be in January. Slaybaugh, did you have anything to say?
Just thank you very much for everything you do for our neighborhood.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
So here, I'm ending it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
We
Good
appreciate
everyone.
night,
you all.
everybody.